Utah's a little greedy state and they wanted to keep it. So what they did was, now they're putting all these people down as having mental illnesses and everything else. You get Social Security faster. You can test the physical illness, but the mental, you can play with. People play it every day.
I'm getting ready to go on treatment center to get myself together because I miss being healthy. I miss just about everything from a normal life. I miss it.
Yeah, everybody's like, it's getting cutthroat out here. People are robbing each other, stealing from one another. Instead of helping each other out, we're doing the exact opposite and kicking somebody when they're down, just like us.
What if the so-called land of opportunity, the beacon of hard work and endless dreams, is quietly devouring itself, one eviction notice, one layoff, one overdose at a time? Picture this. By late 2024, more than 760,000 Americans, people just like you and me, are out there in the cold, tucked beneath bridges or inside tent camps spreading like weeds across our shining cities. That's 1 in every 430 of us, turning into a ghost on the margins. Homeless response teams reached over 1.1 million lives last year alone, a 12% jump from 2023. But these aren't faceless numbers. There are thousands of human stories. Older folks trembling under thin blankets, parents forcing smiles so their kids won't see their fear, restless nights spent on splintered park benches. Do we still have the heart to look them in the eye and ask, how did we let it come to this? And more urgently, what have we, our communities, our government, our markets, done to make it worse? Isn't it maddening, even un-American, that we've poured trillions into bailouts for Wall Street's elite while letting our neighbors drown in $2,000 a month shoebox apartments?
But Utah's a little greedy state and they wanted to keep it. So what they did was, now they're putting all these people down as having mental illnesses and everything else. You get Social Security faster. You can test the physical illness, but the mental, you can play with. People play it every day. You see them play it on the streets. They'll act really fucking nuts. They'll go in and they'll flunk that test. But it's a game.
It makes you question everything we've been told. Are we still a nation of second chances? Or just a machine that chews up the vulnerable and spits out statistics? Stick with me, because what's ahead isn't a dry report. It's 5 hard truths that show how ordinary Americans fall into this nightmare. From job roulette and the rent crisis to the fentanyl chokehold, the slow bleed of poverty, broken policy, and the mental health abyss we pretend doesn't exist. This piece lays it all bare, with the latest numbers, stories that haunt you long after reading, and a path forward that proves we can rewrite this story if we still have the will. So, what do you think? What's the one thread in this tangled mess that keeps you up at night? Let's pull it apart together. One, unemployment and skyrocketing housing costs. All across this country, hardworking Americans are slipping through the cracks, not because they're lazy or reckless, but because of the relentless squeeze of unstable jobs and soaring rents that make a mockery of the American dream. It's a heartbreaking truth I've seen time and again. Folks who do everything right still end up sleeping in their cars. And let's be real, this isn't just bad luck. The game feels rigged, and the deck's been stacked against ordinary people from the start. Recent data from the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis paints a grim picture. By 2024, homelessness rose nearly 30%, reaching 2.3 per 1,000 people, driven largely by job losses and underemployment that crush families' chances of keeping a roof over their heads. Yet what do we keep hearing from the folks in Washington? The same tired blame game about personal responsibility. But tell me, where's the accountability for a system that lets median rent skyrocket while leaving millions of gig workers one missed paycheck away from disaster? According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition 2024, rents in most major cities have surged almost 20% in just 3 years. In Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, even a small apartment fit for a family can cost anywhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month, while wages crawl far behind the rising cost of living. How is anyone supposed to stay afloat in a system like that? Low-income workers, especially those in the service, healthcare, and retail sectors, are fighting a battle they can't seem to win. Their paychecks just don't stretch far enough to cover the basics, let alone provide any real sense of security. For them, every shift is a struggle to keep the lights on and the rent paid, barely holding the wolf at bay. Things only went downhill once the COVID-era tenant protections expired, leaving thousands of families out in the cold when they couldn't scrape together another month's rent. Meanwhile, affordable housing has become more myth than promise. The policies meant to fix the crisis simply don't have the muscle to make a lasting dent. Sure, some cities are pledging new funds for low-cost housing, but most of those plans are too little, too late, patchwork solutions for a deep and growing wound. This kind of inequality clings on like a bad habit, hitting the most vulnerable among us hardest and deepest. Are we really ready to turn our backs on a whole generation of working Americans, people who've poured their hearts into keeping their families afloat, only to see them lose the very homes they fought so hard to keep? What will it take to change course? There's no shortage of ideas out there, but at the end of the day, nothing replaces the simple dignity of a place to call home. This isn't just a problem for someone else. It's our collective responsibility, ours as neighbors, as citizens, as a nation. And if we want to reclaim the promise of this country, we've got to roll up our sleeves and face it together right now. 2. Addiction and the drug crisis. Fentanyl, Xylazine, Meth. These days, fentanyl, a synthetic painkiller about 50 times stronger than heroin, is the grim engine driving millions into despair. Then there's Xylazine, known on the streets as Trank. It's a veterinary sedative that not only strips people of control but rots away their flesh, leaving users scarred and broken in ways no rehab can undo. Add methamphetamine to the mix, that high-octane stimulant that keeps people wired, sleepless, and paranoid, and you've got a storm that tears through minds, families, and whole communities. What's worse, the homeless aren't just victims in this disaster. They're often treated like the enemy. They become the punching bags of a system too weak, too fragmented to pull them back from the edge. In neighborhoods like Kensington, Philadelphia, that weakness is impossible to ignore. The streets there are lined with human tragedy, people so consumed by addiction they can no longer recognize themselves. It's not a scene from a horror movie. It's everyday life in a country where the safety nets have frayed beyond repair. And every time someone reaches for help, they hit another wall. Overbooked treatment centers, underfunded outreach programs, and a public that's grown numb to the sight. How long can this cycle keep turning before it breaks us all? A February 2025 study from the University of California, San Francisco found that roughly 65% of homeless individuals have used illicit drugs regularly, at least 3 times a week at some point in their lives, and that number keeps climbing. The National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics reported over 72,000 overdose deaths from fentanyl in 2023, but fentanyl isn't the only killer in town. Meth and Xylazine, the so-called trank, have now mixed into everything, from cocaine to heroin, creating unpredictable chemical cocktails that turn every hit into a game of Russian roulette. This isn't just a crisis of addiction, it's a crisis of abandonment. And until America decides that compassion is cheaper and nobler than punishment, the streets will keep swallowing our people whole. Heartbreaking as it is, addiction isn't the match that starts the fire. It's more often the last ember after a pile of losses. A job gone, savings drained, relationships shattered, and hope slipping away. It's the end of a long, bruising road that begins with economic collapse and ends in isolation so deep it swallows the soul. And that's how the cycle feeds itself. Addiction costs you your job. The loss of the job drives the cravings harder, and without real medical or emotional support, the spiral just keeps tightening. Have you ever stopped to wonder how a hardworking man or woman, someone who spent years breaking their back for a paycheck, ends up pushed to the edge by a system that looks away? Some folks on the conservative side say addiction is a choice, that they did this to themselves. But isn't that far too easy? Isn't the real accomplice a system that offers no free rehab, no accessible detox centers, and borders so porous that deadly drugs flow in faster than compassion ever could? A 2023 study from the Harm Reduction Journal, still painfully relevant in 2025, found that people exposed to the fentanyl-meth combination face twice the risk of becoming homeless. It's not just because the drugs destroy the body. They tear apart what's left of the fragile support system holding people up, family, friends, employers, and trust itself. So here's the question. With all our wealth, our innovation, our medical breakthroughs, are we truly doing enough to break this chain? Or are we standing by watching another generation sink beneath the surface? If America really wants to heal, it starts with integrated, judgment-free treatment, programs that see people as human beings, not statistics. Because no one should lose their home or their dignity over an addiction they never asked for. 3. Poverty, economic shock, and social unrest. Poverty and sudden economic shocks are among the most powerful forces driving homelessness in America today. Many of us know that sinking feeling, the way one unexpected blow can upend a life overnight. A lost job, a medical emergency, a storm that wipes out everything. Each of these moments can turn stability into survival and comfort into crisis in the blink of an eye. The reality is stark. Lose your main source of income and everything can unravel. How can a family possibly stay afloat when daily expenses keep climbing and real support is nowhere to be found? According to the U.S. Census Bureau 2024, over 12% of Americans are living below the poverty line, and nearly 40% of them struggle each month to meet even basic living costs. That means millions are just one paycheck, one medical bill, or one rent increase away from losing their homes. And when the safety nets give out, they wind up in cars, tents, or shelters, quietly absorbed into the swelling numbers of America's unhoused. Are we really willing to let our neighbors slide into this fate because of an unavoidable financial shock? It's time we admit that poverty and social instability aren't about laziness. They're the products of an economic system that too often rewards the few while abandoning the rest. When rents climb faster than wages and inequality widens like a canyon, every small shock hits harder. Families are left balancing on a knife's edge, with little more than hope keeping them upright. Have we turned a blind eye to millions of honest Americans simply because they don't fit the system's definition of success? And when you look closer, it gets worse. Behind these statistics are real people facing crises they never caused, parents juggling 2 jobs and still falling behind, seniors choosing between rent and medication, veterans haunted by both trauma and debt. How can we stand by and watch an entire generation lose their homes simply because they can't afford to live? Offering financial relief and housing support isn't charity, it's responsibility. It's the duty of both government and community to step up before desperation turns into disaster. Can we find the will to make that change? Or will we keep watching poverty tighten its grip around the backbone of our nation, the working class that built it? Four, the failure of policy and support systems. Here's a hard truth most Americans hesitate to confront. Our current policies and support systems are failing, not just falling short, but collapsing under their own weight. Despite billions poured into housing programs and decades of government pledges, the crisis keeps growing. According to the latest HUD report, homelessness rose another 3% in 2024. Bringing the total to nearly 770,000 people without stable housing. So we have to ask, what are we doing wrong? One glaring issue is the lack of coordination between federal, state, and local agencies, along with nonprofits that often operate in silos. The Coordinated Entry System CES, meant to simplify access to services, has turned into a bureaucratic maze. People get lost in the paperwork, waiting months for help that rarely comes. Are we really building systems so complex that the very people who need them most can't even get through the door? Then there's the uneven distribution of funding. Major cities like Los Angeles and New York receive millions each year, yet their homeless encampments keep expanding. The problem isn't just about money, it's about how that money is spent. Too much ends up trapped in administrative red tape and temporary fixes instead of being invested in long-term housing solutions. Are we propping up bureaucracies instead of lifting up human lives? Meanwhile, local charities and outreach workers are stretched thin, doing the heavy lifting where government efforts stall. People cycle endlessly through shelters, hospitals, and short-term aid, never reaching stability. Without deep structural reform, this vicious cycle will keep turning, wasting both lives and taxpayer dollars. So why can't we fix it? Is it political apathy or a loss of moral urgency in a nation that once prided itself on compassion? Until our leaders show the courage to commit to lasting, affordable housing and genuine interagency collaboration, thousands more will keep slipping through the cracks. A nation cannot boast progress while hundreds of thousands live in hunger, fear, and neglect. These men, women, and children deserve more than pity or temporary shelter. They deserve a fair chance to rebuild their lives. The real question is, when will we finally stop accepting a system that fails and start building one that truly saves? Five, mental health is overlooked. There's a painful truth this nation still refuses to face. Millions of homeless Americans aren't just battling the cold, hunger, or the loss of shelter. They're fighting invisible wars inside their own minds. Mental health is one of the most critical, yet most neglected, pieces of the homelessness puzzle. And maybe, just maybe, that's why so many never find their way out. But why do we keep turning a blind eye when we know that with proper care, recovery, and even renewal is possible? The data is clear. Roughly 45% of people experiencing homelessness in the U.S. live with at least one serious mental health condition, from depression and anxiety to bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. This isn't simply a private struggle, it's a public failure. When we ignore mental illness, we don't just fail individuals, we create a ripple that weakens the entire fabric of society. Because a person who can't access timely treatment will struggle to hold a job, maintain relationships, or secure housing, no matter how hard they try. But here's the question: do we really understand the scope of this crisis? Can a society continue pretending that mental illness is a matter of willpower or personal choice? The truth is, homeless individuals are not merely people without homes. They're people living through emotional storms, haunted by trauma, loneliness, and invisible wounds. Many are victims of a broken mental health care system that has far too few beds, too few specialists, and too many barriers. That failure traps people in a revolving door between the streets, emergency rooms, and jail cells, a cycle that punishes illness instead of treating it. Think about it. How can someone search for work, hold a conversation, or simply live a normal life when they're battling constant anxiety, fear, or despair? How can we expect them to climb out when the system keeps pulling them under? Many struggle with undiagnosed disorders because they can't afford medical care. Mental health services are often reserved for those with insurance, leaving the most vulnerable entirely shut out. So what's the solution? It's not enough to just hand out keys to an apartment. Real solutions must weave mental health treatment into housing programs, offering therapy, medication support, and community-based care that prevent people from slipping back into homelessness. No one can live a full or happy life with a mind in turmoil. We cannot measure a person's worth or a society's success while denying them the chance to heal. These men and women need more than shelter. They need safety, compassion, and the dignity of being understood. So ask yourself, are we truly fighting homelessness or just managing it while ignoring the pain beneath it all? Could it be that the greatest barrier to ending homelessness isn't housing alone, but our refusal to treat the mind as part of the home? Conclusion: the cycle of homelessness isn't some string of unfortunate coincidences. It's a web of economic, social, and psychological traps that wrap tighter with every setback. Each job loss, each medical bill, each policy failure pushes people one step further from stability. And here's the hard truth. In today's America, anyone could fall into that spiral. The gap between those who have and those who don't keeps stretching wider, leaving millions balancing on the edge. The solution isn't found in quick fixes or one-off charity drives. What's needed is a serious, long-term commitment from both government and community to rebuild the foundation. Programs like Housing First, which provide a safe place to live before addressing addiction or mental health challenges, have already proven transformative in cities that dared to try. But housing alone won't heal the wound. We need an approach that brings together mental health care, medical treatment, job training, and real economic opportunity. A system built on compassion instead of red tape. So here's the question we can't keep dodging. Do we have the courage to face homelessness for what it truly is? Not a failure of individuals, but a test of our society's humanity? Because until we see it that way, until we treat it as our problem, not their problem, the tents will keep multiplying, and the silence around them will only grow heavier. If America still wants to call itself the land of opportunity, it must prove it, not with slogans, but with shelter, dignity, and a place for everyone to belong.